You're listening to Parenting Our Future with certified parent coach Robin McMahon, author of The Yelling Cure and founder of Parenting for Connection. My podcast is all about providing you with the tools and solutions you need in your parenting so you can create the family you always wanted. Hey everybody, it's Robin here. Welcome to Parenting Our Future. You know, I have some pretty awesome guests, and I'm lucky enough to have some beautiful people that come into my awareness and have some pretty amazing and magical skills. And today I am talking to Megan Fitzgerald, and she is one of these people. I can't wait to tell you and for you to hear what she does. It is so cool. I'm so pumped and excited about what she does. So first and foremost, let me tell you about her. After 18 years as an educator, curriculum developer, and school leader, Megan has her dream gig as an entrepreneur, educator, and mom who helps families everywhere, including hers, learn outside. Prior to Tinkergarten, which is her baby and her dream gig, Megan worked as an elementary school principal, a math and science specialist, and a public teacher and private school teacher in New York, Massachusetts, and California. Now, she has a ton of educational experience, and what is so cool about her, though, is in addition to all of her learning that she did, she was also trained as a forest school leader in Bridgewater College in the UK. I love that. I didn't even know that was a thing. So Megan has 3 kids. They are all 10 and under. So she's kind of a rock star mom as well. But when she's with her kids, she is an unapologetic mom who loves to play along with them in the mud. She dances in the rain, and she even knows how to build an igloo with her bare hands. So she is someone who I am so happy to introduce to you all. Welcome, Megan.
Well, thanks, Robin. I'm really glad to be here. And I likewise love the work that you do and helping families to figure out how to work with children in ways that are really supportive of both themselves and the children. So needed always, but especially right now. So really, really glad to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, this is great. Now, I just said that your gig is Tinkergarten. What is Tinkergarten?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Tinkergarten, you can think of it as every family's guide to purposeful outdoor play. So really helping families to figure out how to use time outdoors during the early years to make the most of that really important time in their child's development. And we focus on babies through about 8 to 10 years old in our work. So and working with families to both understand how their child is developing socially, emotionally, and cognitively, and then what role play, and especially play in the outdoors, which is really the ideal learning place for healthy, curious, capable kids, and bringing families both the concepts and then the ideas to make that time outside, turn that into real learning for their kids.
Yeah, that's great. And so you're saying that outdoors is the place to be.
It is an ideal learning environment for so many reasons. One, just for all of the affinity we have for the natural world and this combination between its calming effects and how stimulating it is. So when I was a classroom teacher, if you had told me I could do anything that would both calm my students and put them on stimulated high alert for brain development, I would have stood on my head, right? On the desk, So nature does that naturally. It puts us in a really calming state. It allows everyone, no matter what age you are, to attend better to what's going on. And it's just a huge open container with a lot of possibilities, a lot of objects we can use, and a lot of space for imagination, invention, messes, all sorts of things that in the early years really help to develop critical skills for the long term. So, and so in general, a lifelong connection to the outdoors builds the habit of being outdoors more often, which, really leads to healthier patterns for mind and body. And then also leads to stewardship and kind of caring for our planet, which is something that's so important for our kids, especially their generation with what they're going to be facing. It's going to be so critical to raise the next generation of people who really feel that connection and care for the earth. So all of those reasons brought us. And most of our work at Tinkergarten has been in finding and supporting thousands of amazing teachers, at leading our curriculum with families in their local communities and in-person classes. And we did that for 23 seasons.
Wow.
And still excited to do that again. But during this time, since we've really wanted to make sure that we're helping do our part to keep the spread of coronavirus down, we've put on hold all of our in-person classes and have started to develop direct-to-parent content videos and now online classes starting this fall to help families continue to connect with others and learn about outdoor play.
That's great. And so you're really unlike you're like everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
having to pivot, right? Having
Absolutely.
to do this. And so what you have done though is pretty incredible. You have a family playbook, which is a free resource for families to not just help them survive this time like we were in the springtime and
Yep.
and through the summer, really just trying to figure out how do we do this, but let's look at the fall as a new season and let's thrive. This is what you're trying to help us do. Come
Yeah.
on.
Well,
That's awesome.
we have a really active community of teachers and families, and we've done a lot of researching and listening and living. I mean, the whole Tinkergarten team, we're nearly all parents ourselves, so we've been contending with all that this time has asked us to step up and do, and really listen to what which pieces we could be putting in place that would allow us to move just slightly from being responsive and making it through the day to making each day feel better, feel like a chance to thrive. And this is a time when our kids are actually really good teachers. They're quite adaptable and quite resilient. So sometimes a little framing helps us learn from them as well and soften our own expectations for ourselves so that we can be leaning into the things that are actually really great lessons about right now and letting
Right.
go a little bit where it's just suffering to try and be doing more than we could possibly do in this time.
Yeah, yeah, and I think what you're saying is also focusing on the things that are also true. Like, yes, we are living in a pandemic that we have never experienced in our
Nope.
lifetime before, but there are things that are also true, right? That you can also focus on. And so, with that, you have this playbook, and you have it broken into different sections, which
Sure.
are really good. So you have, and I want to sort of talk about each of these because
Sure.
I think it's really important setting up your day, looking at what your kids really need. What does their body need sensory wise? What about social? How do we set our kids up to safely socialize?
Mhm.
And so I'd like to kind of talk about each one of those. And so
Sure.
let's starting with your day. How do you set your day up for
Yeah.
success? And I think what we're assuming here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're kind of assuming that you're in a situation where you're doing some, if not all, online learning. Is that
Yeah,
a
well, we
fair?
don't know. Really,
We
you could
don't
be
know.
doing anything. And a lot, some of us are still in the time we're talking, and hopefully by the time this airs, this won't be the case, but at least in parts of the United States where we are, we're still wondering what it's going to look like. And that's quite something to be experiencing as a parent. But at the end of the day, no matter what learning looks like for your children, your family needs a schedule, and kids need to know what the day is going to look and feel like. And that couldn't be more true in a classroom. I mean, without the classroom schedule is so important because it allows children to calm and know what to expect and focus on what they're doing and what comes next. And kids need that to feel comfort. And when we can repeat things in a schedule, then the transitions are easier, kids know what to expect, and it's familiar, and humans just do better with familiar rhythms in their life, adults included. So
Yeah,
whether
that's so
you
true.
have your children at home or you're trying to navigate the times before and after kids are somewhere else, especially if there's a lot of computer time involved, having a schedule is really, really supportive of everybody. And there are just some things to think about that make making schedules easier. So
Mhm.
one idea is to think of time of day and when I was a teacher and I was making my schedule, I did everything I could to put certain kinds of things earlier in the day. And kids
Mm,
can tend to come fresher.
mm,
They're really able to attend to things in the morning in ways that sometimes in the afternoon they're not. So I would put things that might be more of an academic focus or that might require more cognitive load for kids in the morning.
mhm.
Um, so that's one example. The middle of the day, a time to rest, a time to recoup, and then the afternoon, a time to play, put things into practice, move our bodies. And so thinking about the times of day can be really helpful. So we have some basic for different age groups kind of ideas around that. We also have ideas about how to build in play breaks because kids do
Mm,
need to take breaks, especially if you are having children on a screen in order to access their education or their learning or connect with their teachers. It is important to move your body, to take a break, to play a little bit, to explore, to use your hands to build. And we have a whole series of play breaks that we'll send weekly to families that are sort of 5-minute ideas that could lead to hours of play, but can also be simple little things that you can do with your kids. We encourage families to make a jar and you fill it with ideas. And when it's time for a break, whether you've got a break in your schedule that you've scheduled in, or you can tell kids need a break, they can pull from the jar. And the excitement of a new idea often is enough to get kids really easily engaged. And each idea just uses things from around the house or outside
I
to
love
move
it.
our bodies and play because we do need to remember to build those breaks in. So that's another example.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And we need to look at their cues as well, right? Like when they're getting
Yes.
extra fidgety and stuff like let's go run around. Let's go get our wiggles out. Let's go, do some stuff. And you just mentioned that you send these tips and tools to people. And so you do have a mailing list if people
Yeah, if
want
you are
this,
on our
right?
mailing list, you'll
Yeah,
automatically receive our play breaks each week. And we have them for different age groups so you can bring in.
awesome.
And if you have different ages of children, lots of ideas. But those kind of fun, easy little moments that are designed to make sure we're balancing bodies and sparking ideas and giving space for fun and movement, I think is a really big in time outside.
Yeah. So I want to know what your thoughts are about if we have our kids at home with us and you're as an educator in so many different areas that you've worked in, how do you feel about our kids are at home, they're learning, and we feel like we need to reinvent or recreate the classroom environment
Yes,
for our kids. So let me just say, what I see is parents spinning out because they
absolutely.
are so worried that their kids are not going to keep up, and and they want to make sure that they're staying above or at the level that they should be, and I'm using air quotes for should.
Hmm.
And really what they're doing is they're hurting their relationship with their kids because their kids don't want to do it or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's causing a lot of friction, anxiety. So what do you say about that? Do we put as much focus on school if we're doing it at home? How do we find a balance between
Yeah.
feeling okay with what we're teaching, even though we know that that's not what the quality of education they would be getting at school?
Yeah. Well, I think there can be really helpful to think about schooling and educating as different things. And
Okay.
schooling is a word that really has to do with group learning in a setting with someone who's been trained and has been given all the resources required to lead a group through a set of curriculum and learning experiences. And that's what school is. And school's, wonderful for what it is. But when children are at home with you, so many of the things that just defined what school is are not in place, and they shouldn't be because they're home. So if you think about how do I want to educate my child, I'm not going to school them because I'm not a school. One, you're a parent. And even as a career educator, that very relationship is fundamentally different. I can teach other children and it's easier than teaching my own children in some ways because I'm their mom. And
Yeah.
so being the mom already makes you just this extra special teacher, very powerful, but not the same as a classroom teacher. So expecting yourself, and for most people, they don't have the training. I happen to, but I can tell you it's still not the same because I am a mom
That's so
and they're
good
my
to hear,
children.
though. Yeah.
There's some actually great articles. There's one in the New York Times recently that's like, parents really make terrible teachers for their kids, and here's why. Just to give us all, it's okay, right? So there's that piece of the relationship, but there's also the piece that, one, you weren't trained and you don't have the benefit of a group of peers at the same age to bounce off each other, to do so many of the things that you do when you're in a classroom. So one of the biggest things is letting go that you need to recreate the school experience, because you're educating, and then lean into what you are the best person in the world to teach them. You now are around them for hours. And I will tell you, I love school. I was a principal as a teacher, but there's a decent amount of time in that day that gets spent on things that aren't really teaching, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and part
Yeah.
of that's learning to be part of a group and learning to be part of a community, and all that's good. And they'll learn plenty of that. But they're learning to be a person with you in really beautiful ways. And so part of that is when you are with them, one of the things on our making a schedule is to have a meal together if you can. And I've reorganized my schedule to have lunch with our kids every day. And it's game changing. We get to have lunch with our kids every day. Like, we weren't doing that before. So look for the moments of the day where you can connect with them. And it doesn't have to be all day. Go for a walk at the end of the day, show interest in what they're interested in, read with them in the evenings or during the day, and just take a block and do that. And that alone, that ability to read with you, whether they can read to you, you're reading to them, you're nailing literacy in a way that's very meaningful to them, because it's time with you. So that lesson, whatever it is about, is multiples more meaningful than it would be with anyone else. So I think, yeah, thinking about those things, and then really leaning heavily into play, because kids learn naturally through play how to problem solve, how to be creative, how to um, they learn basic STEM concepts. They learn how to communicate their ideas. There are so many skills that children are learning when they're involved in play. And the more that we can help them to independently play, the more that they can be learning on their own. And that's a lot of what we've spent our time since we've kind of pivoted, is really packaging up the learning that you would do by watching a Tinkergarten leader in a class, and helping parents at home think about how to approach setting up their environment and their own role as someone who helps kids play independently, and the kind of enriching play that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, what I really like is that you're really giving them the framework for their family to do this, right? Because I think we need help, right? This
Absolutely.
is not normal for us, so we need help in, like, how do I set up my day? What does my child actually really need during the day? Which is my next question for you. You said play breaks, you said independent play, you said, okay, look, if we want to nail literacy, sitting with your child and reading with them, either they're reading, you're reading, you've added also in a layer of connection, probably some affection,
Yes,
and that is all really important for your child's development and for your relationship with your child for a lifetime, right? This is
absolutely.
this
And
is important stuff.
it doesn't have to be you doing that all day long also.
Yeah,
It can be
right.
you
Because
building in those blocks. Kids will, especially if you can try to do them at the same time on a given day, then your child knows to come and rely on those doses of real quality attention with you. And there's actually wonderful research that kids don't need constant quality attention, and they don't need quantity, they just need quality. So if they have the expectation that they're going to have lunch with, just saying it, like in our world, it's lunch with me, we go on a walk at the end of the day, and we read at night.
yeah,
And so, and then we try our best to create lots of opportunities for play during the day and touching in, but those are the quality anchors in the day. And we know
I
they're
like that.
coming. We know to look forward to them. We always have breakfast. We have a little circle time. And we sing and talk about what the day is going to be, and use different tools, and different families will find different ways to show pictures of what the schedule is going to be depending on the age of the kids. But just whatever you can commit to, being able to show up for that with quality. Kids can take those quality moments and then those can help them ride through the rest of the day and know that. And that's one of the things about being home. If your kids are home with you and they're, even if they're online and you're working or you're doing whatever you need to do, you're still there. And that's pretty
Yeah.
massive for kids.
Yeah.
And I think we think about the trauma to them when at the same time, they're the safest emotionally they've ever been, because
There we
they're
are.
like the center of their safety world is always around. So in a way you can kind of take a breath, because some of what they need socially is just to make sure that they're safe and you are there. Even though the world is a bit scary, you are literally there for them in ways that they were not the case before. So
Yeah, it's funny having my entire family home all the time. It makes me feel relaxed too,
yeah,
because my happy place is when we're all together, but also when we're all together and safe. Like
yes.
that is a huge value for me. So yeah, I feel it too for sure. So let's talk about and by the way, I love that you just said quality time anchors. I love that
Yeah.
idea. Like time that they can rely on. I really do love that. And I think that's a question for everybody listening is where can you put those anchors in your day? And
Yep.
know that look, even as a kid, I didn't need my parents all the time. I didn't want to be with my
Well, my
parents all
mother
the
was not. I mean, my mother, I was loved, but she was doing her thing and I was out playing. Like that's the
time.
way it
Yeah.
worked. So
Yeah, right. And
yeah.
the whole play piece you kind of have nailed down. Like play, and there's tons of resources that you have about how to play. And we'll talk about those in a minute. But tell me, you're saying in your parents in your family playbook that that there are certain needs that kids have,
Yeah.
right? What are those needs above and beyond just play breaks?
Well, one set of needs that I think parents who've come through Tinkergarten have been really grateful to learn about, or to think about your child's sensory system. So many of us learn about the five senses in kindergarten. It kind of stops there, right? But there are more senses than those five. Those five are very important,
Yeah.
but there are other senses that balance our body and help us be alert and aware in space. So two examples of those that really come into play for kids, both their behavior and their learning, their ability to learn. One's called the vestibular system, and it's based in your inner ear. And basically it's activated when you change the position of your head.
Hmm.
So kids who seek a lot of vestibular stimulation, just to be, and everybody's system is different. So it's not good or bad. Everybody has a different sort of size sensory cup. Some fill up easily, some need a lot of stimulation. But you'll see it, you can see it in those children because they'll want to spin or invert, or they'll want to do things that activate that inner ear. But we all need to activate that inner ear in order to actually turn on our brain for learning. So if you're seated all day and you're looking at a screen and that's your experience, your ear is never moving. Your head is really not changing position. So you'll have an understimulated vestibular system, and that
Hmm.
generally means your brain is understimulated, or if you need high stimulation, you're not getting what you need.
Hmm.
Another sense is called the proprioceptive system, and it has to do with the muscles and joints in our body feeling pressure. We as humans need that in order to understand where we are in space. So that's your kid who's tapping or moving or rocking or trying to get that kind of stimulation. And we see that there are fidget spinners in classrooms everywhere
Exactly. Yeah.
that we didn't necessarily have, but kids aren't moving enough. Their recess is short. If it happens, kids are not getting that sensory feedback that they need. So one thing that's been wonderful is hearing reports of, since kids have been home, less of that kind of fidgety behavior because their day has been much more active. But once we go to screens and online learning, if there's no breaks, no
Mhm.
opportunities to move our heads or get our muscles jump and push on things, and really give our joints that feedback
Mhm.
that they need, then
Mhm.
kids will start to you'll start to see it in kids' behavior, and in kids'
Exactly.
inability to attend to learning, and
Mhm.
that's their bodies crying out. So some of our play breaks every week have to do with getting the big muscles going and
Yeah.
getting the head to move in ways that
Wow.
are really, kids don't even know they're doing it. But for example, snacks become a big part of the day. And so one thing we started doing is hiding snacks and giving clues that you need to, look like a worm. So it's going to be low down today, or it's going to be high, look like a giraffe, whatever it is, like if we hit it in a giraffe kind of place, we hit it in a worm kind of place, because kids will then get up and down and crawl around and use their muscles, move their head, in what's a natural break in the day. So that's an easy way. No matter what you're doing, you can just do that in the morning, and you're building in a play break that gives your kid's sensory system what it needs. So
and this is everybody. This is not just if you have sensory processing disorder.
You
this
and I
is
need to do this.
Everybody. Yes.
It's our friends that have sensory challenges that are the canary in the coal mine. We can see it for them, but it's happening for all of us. So all the more need for learners who really have sensitive sensory systems, and that processing we need to be using multiple senses, or we don't get practice with processing and integrating them. So every child needs to use multiple senses.
I think that's a really good message, a really strong message. Yeah, I like that a lot. You are currently listening to the Parenting Our Future podcast. I'm parent coach Robin McMahon. If you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with someone who you think might also need to hear this message. And please don't forget to subscribe, and I would be grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating on iTunes. If you'd like to connect with me, all my details are in the show notes, and for a copy of my book, go to yellingcurebook.com. Now back to the show. So in addition to what you were just talking about with the body's needs, sensory needs, you mentioned screens, right? Can you elaborate on screens a little bit more and what that does to us?
Absolutely. I just actually wrote a post because my oldest just turned 10, and I realized I got the iPhone right before she was born. So my experience with, and that's when I think screens really came on into my world in a significant way. And thinking about my thoughts as a parent and as an educator on the effect of screens. And it's a hard one because there's research. We don't really know what the right dosage of screens are. We get a pretty strong message that before 18 months, screens are not a good idea for the developing brain. And even 18 to 24 months, we really should be with them. And but then from 2 on, what's the right amount and what's the right kind? And I've done so much research on this and really thought about it both as a parent and an educator. And there are a couple of things that have been really helpful resources for me. One is Anya Kamenetz's The Art of Screen Time was such a helpful book. So I would definitely recommend that because she took all of the research and laid it out for us. And really, it's neither, no worries, unlimited screens, or no screens at all. It's really an art and in the middle of figuring out how to build healthy screen habits for yourself and for kids, and to think about your child and what your child needs. And so really the things that come out of it are whatever screens you're going to bring in high quality content, interactive experiences and experiences that are designed for the age group. So look for organizations like Khan Academy Kids, or, thinking about anything in the wide open school that Common Sense Media puts together, are people who are designing media and apps for children and for the developing brain. Like they are doing it. So you're kind of already getting something that is going to be the best screen use for kids, because screens have wonderful things to offer. We just have to make sure that we're balancing the impact, because they are designed to hypnotize our brains at the same time. So you just have to make sure that you're balancing. And then some really practical advice on how to think about balancing time on screen with time off screen, and getting kids' bodies, like we were just talking about, some of the sensory input they need. If you're on a screen, you're just using your sight. There's many other senses that need to be used, and you're holding your body in a really straight place. And if it's not interactive, it's very passive. None of that for very long is great for a child. So you can engage in a screen and then make sure that you're not doing it for too long, that you're taking a break and doing something else to balance out your experience.
So if you're just using really one sense, right, what does that do to the rest of your senses?
Well, you're not getting the opportunity to develop them. So, I mean, when you think about a child's brain, especially in the first 5, really 10 years of life, is being designed through repeated use. right? So you've got all the neurons you're born with when you're born, but the pathways and the connections between them form through experience, and they become stronger through repeated experience. So if you're not using a sense, it's underdeveloping, really. And in addition to that, part of the brain that is so critical to learning, because we take in all the information in the world, we take in through our senses, right? Um, and we balance our bodies by integrating the information from multiple senses. So your body's designed to want to see the danger, hear the danger, smell the danger, bring all that together, right? Or the opportunity, or, we're designed to want to pull in information from all of our senses. So there's a part of our brain designed just to learn to integrate different sensory information together and make sense of it. And if you're only using one sense, that part of your brain's not developing either, and that capacity. And that actually leads to higher level thinking later, being able to integrate different information. And so it really actually has tremendous impact to narrow the senses to one sense. It's really not good for kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's really good information. And I haven't heard it quite that way. But it makes a lot of sense. And so we've got to just know that and notice that and be aware of it so that we have that balance, right? And we just focus on play and independent play, which you're really an expert at. And, I was watching a couple of your videos beforehand, and, the things that you say about independent play, that you've got some kind of rules, right? That you have everything in reach for kids, like setting up like a garden a kitchen and outside kitchen. You're like, just let your kids get dirty, let stuff get dirty. Like if you're giving them pots and pans to play with, don't worry about them getting dirty or maybe even broken. Like, let's just let go of that stuff. Don't overmanage the play, because there's no right or wrong way to play, right? And you're talking about using inexpensive, open-ended stuff to just play. And we were talking about this, and I was actually thinking about this the other day. I remember making mud pies as a kid. Like, nobody, who does that now? Like, do we do that now? I don't even know, right? But you have sort of some areas that you really love, like outdoor kitchen, a water. What are the other areas that you do?
Well, we did a series. We have already released 3 videos in a series that will continue to develop. And we called it actually independent play training. So there's sort of sleep training, there's potty training, but we all need independent, not that our children actually need it. They're wired to know how to play independently. But as a family, how do you build the habit of kids playing independently? And for our family, they have a number of the skills, but when we're here, we're quite intriguing. Or, we'd end up being called on to entertain, or what am I going to do? I'm bored, and that whole world it's really about building that independent play muscle. And underneath it all is the belief that when children lead their own play, when they make the decisions, when they enter in and they're motivated through, and it's really their experience, that they'll get the most benefit. Plus we'll get time back because we all have things that we have to do. So that's the goal. And so there are 3-part series. The first of which is really kind of a lot of what you're talking about, which is setting up spaces. So if you designate what play practitioners call play centers, and we gave 3 examples: a mud kitchen, a water playground, and an art center. And just taking a corner of your house and setting it up and calling it a center and saying, kids, this is your domain to play. And so an art center would have all sorts of art materials, like loose parts, paper, pens, paint, and you can make a mess. So a lot of people love to build that outside, or even build a little box that can go outside, because outside's a great place to have a mess. Or a mud kitchen where you can pretend cook up concoctions of all kinds using what's outside. Just setting up those spaces can lead to hours and hours and hours and weeks of play that kids start and can just continue on their own. After that, there's a video 2 looks at how to give invitations. So just the fact that how you present options to kids that might keep them playing and get them into spark new ideas. So how do you do that as a parent? How do you spark ideas? Because that's a very powerful thing that we can do without taking over the direction of it, and letting kids stay in the lead, but giving them really enticing invitations. And that's what we develop at Tinkergarten. So all of our content for parents are really feeding up the invitations for you. So you don't have to think of the ideas because we're all exhausted,
Yeah.
but use what you've got. Here's an invitation for kids that they will can take and run with. And then the third one is about what role to play to support once they're going, what do we do? And there's a wonderful concept of being a stage manager. And this is actually a video we're going to release in the next few days, but it'll be out by the time this airs. But really taking some lessons from the theater, not being the director, but let your lead actor do their thing and just be in the background, putting the right prop in the right place or waiting for the call, knowing that obviously they need us sometimes, but it's their show. And so what are some practical ways to use that metaphor to help you actually keep them independent?
That's so great. I love that. I love that. And yeah, your videos are phenomenal and they're fun to watch too. So yeah, that's great. Now, let's just talk about one last thing, and that is about the social part that is a really big deal when we're at home with our kids, and I know that kids are struggling without that social piece, especially if we've got parents that are really freaked out and really scared. And look, there's, that makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
It is scary. And some parents have very good reason for being extra cautious. I have a client whose child had bacterial meningitis when he was a baby. And so she has to be extra careful because every cold he gets turns into a chest infection.
I think immunocompromised children, especially, it's terrifying. Or if we have elders in our lives who are in risk categories. And, I have a dear friend who's caring for her parents, and they are both in high risk groups, and needs to be able to be mom and have kids have an experience, but yet also make sure that there's no threat to them. So we're all in a state of real discomfort and nervousness, but kids do need to connect with others. And there are some ways that we can use technology to do that, but there's also so much value in being together and being able to play with others. So being able to play with our elders, special experiences with grandparents, and then special experiences with other friends. So we have a whole part of our playbook, but also our website that helps people think about how to help young kids play safely. So first idea is definitely be outdoors, because the chances of transmittal are so much lower, and it's just a safer environment. And also, to the extent that you can, help your children make friends with masks, because masks really do help cut down the transmittal. I know there are lots of feelings about masks in different places, but our experience, having consulted and worked and taught children, they're really fun ways that are very kid friendly to play and to introduce masks gradually, so kids feel really comfortable with them. And they're so adaptable, children, that they'll get used to whatever is going on, as long as we frame it in a comfortable way and give them lots of time to get used to it.
They're more resilient than we are, let's be honest.
They're so much more resilient than we are. They're great teachers in this regard. I have a great blog post about parenting for the real, not the ideal. And I tell a story about my daughter who had a club foot as a baby and got to 9 months, and the treatment hadn't worked. So she had to get 2 booties and bars, and 11 hours a day she was wearing these. Her feet were connected with the bar, and she was such an active crawler. I came home so upset that this was just so awful for her. And I mean, within 2 hours, she was crawling around, figured out how to do everything with that bar on. I mean, they're just amazing. And it was such a good lesson to me. And to me, what if I had not given her that, that treatment? She's now a runner. It's just, so all of these things, but it's hard in the moment. So you can help kids make friends with masks. That gives a nice comfort and barrier. And then there's lots of fun ways to help them learn to play safely at a distance with each other, even little ones. We can talk about our personal bubbles. There are games you can play with 6 feet of string. And in Tinkergarten, we even learned about lobsters. So what lobsters have to do with safety, you might be wondering. But lobsters are an animal that actually moves backwards faster than they move forwards. It's like the only animal we can find. But if you can learn about lobsters and you can play like waddling backwards as lobsters and make that really fun, once kids get used to that, you can be in a play date situation, just even use your lobster claws at your child without saying a word. They'll move backwards. Because it's just a
cool.
reminder to move a little bit back, to keep our bubble, but it's not shaming, it's not scaring, it's not about a heavy thing. It's just it's a device. There's so many fun ways to help kids have, to be there and to help them keep their distance but still play with their friends. So
yeah, and we don't want to scare them unnecessarily, right? We don't want to shame them because I know we're like, get back, you're too close, right? Let's not do that.
Well, they're just being natural. I mean, kids are meant to connect to each other, but they're also meant to love and care for each other in their community. So if we can help them see that this is how we're loving and caring for each other right now, kids can actually make sense of that. They just don't have the impulse control that we do. So they just need a lot of reminders. So as long as you can be there and you have your little tools, whether it's lobster walks or reminders or keep your bubble, whatever it is, you can just gentle reminders, and kids will do it.
Yeah, they will do it. Yeah. I love that. And remember, they need reminders. Don't now start telling yourself a story about my kid doesn't listen, or, he's just doing this to make me crazy, or she just won't listen. It's not, look, they just need reminders. They do not have a fully grown brain. They need reminders, and it's our job to guide them. And if that means extra reminders, it doesn't show that they're obstinate or misbehaving. It just shows that they need your help. And that's
it's exactly that repetition that they need. And that's what their brain is right now. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, this has been absolutely a wonderful discussion. Thank you for your expertise and your knowledge. You can find everything on Tinkergarten.com.
Absolutely.
The free family playbook. Hello. Yes, everybody needs that. I'm going to put the link to this and some of your videos in the show notes. So you have to go no further than the show notes here and take in all of the resources that you have. Thank you for providing this service, for doing this for us parents who need the extra help right now. We do. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Well, it's joyful work, and I'm right in there with you. I need every bit of help I can get. So I think it comes from a very personal place, and so enjoy talking with you, Robin. I'd love to do this again. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, I would too. Thank you so much.
Great. You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this edition of my podcast, Parenting Our Future. I'm parent coach Robin McMahon, and if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with someone who you think might also need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my work, I'd be grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating. For those of you who like my content and want more, visit me at yellingcurebook.com to get your copy of my book and to find other resources to help you. Until next time, I am wishing you and your family peace and connection.